and we're very happy to have Enrica here today. She is an expert in her field, and I will begin her presentation.
This project, promoted by the Fossili-Camp Foundation, started from the need to enhance bibliographic and documentary heritage of the Fossili Foundation, Carpi, Modena, Italy. Since 1996, the Fossili Foundation has managed a memorial system on international importance that includes the historical site of the Fossili camp, the Monument Museum to the Deportee, and from 2010, the building housing the former synagogues of Carpi, where its headquarters is located. Fossili Camp was a detention and transit camp during the Second World War for almost 5,000 people. The major tangible heritage is further enriched by another more intangible asset, the Study Center, consisting of an interesting archives of subjective documentation, major book collection, and artworks. The primary goal of the Foundation is the protection and preservation of its heritage, together with its enhancement sustained through activities of research, documentation, training, and cultural promotion. Most important activities are informational, educational, and scientific initiatives on deportation, on the Second World War, on human rights, and about intercultural education. Many memorial sites in Europe in the past decades have been facing difficulties to preserve and renew their heritage and the message contained therein. In a certain sense, they now lie between the direct testimonies of the few people who still are alive and the historical contemporary debate. Here we would like to report and discuss the cultural and educative project promoted by the Fossili-Camp Foundation and Fanti High School, both in Carpi, Modena, Italy, between December 2019 and May 2020, named From Historical Revisionism to Fake News. The challenge was to make students better equipped to move in our information world, detect fake news, then correct use of word, incomplete information starting from the place where they live. They had a guided tour to the Monument Museum to the Deportee for political and racial reasons in Nazi camps. They are already aware of the Fossili Camp, a temporary detention center for the victims of racial and political persecution and refugees from 1942 up to 1960. The first part of the project was a course of information literacy. Students aged 16 approached information sources and copyright rules. The teacher was Tommaso Paiano, our expert was Mari Calosi, I was the tutor, while Rossella Torelli, the teacher, cooperated mainly in the classroom. The whole course was interactive. Working with students, we try to identify a topic, try to define it, and distinguish between prejudice, information, data, and opinions. Then we talk about copyright in digital world. Students learn to use OPACs and move inside the libraries. Later, they learn to move in the Wikipedia world, creating a sandbox and starting to work. Our aim was not to teach to the students how to evaluate information, a text, or a piece of news. following, for instance, the IFLA grid how to spot fake news, but directly asking teens to propose affordable contents so as to create new encyclopedic entries or review or create links for Wikipedia Italy. All the entries were around the main two already present, ex Campo Fossoli and the Museo del Deportato e del Rifugiato Politico. Then the students were invited to use the libraries and archival resources offered by the Library of the Fossoli Camp Foundation and the Public Library of Carpi. To make their task easier, students got organized into 14 pairs. The activity fields were 3, so the boys and girls were either explorers, illustrators, or writers. Explorers had to find new links between the entries. Illustrators tried to find new photos or illustration, integrate the caption, paying special attention to copyright rules. Writers tried to create new entries. For instance, name of Fossoli, database of people detained at Fossoli camp, or Ada Marchesini, a prisoner whose letters to her family are now in the Fossoli Foundation archives. The products came from students are of different levels. Nevertheless, no one managed to complete the task because the COVID-19 epidemic suddenly interrupted our activities on February 22. So later, we tried to complete the student work. A first evaluation allows us to identify following output. Findings. Even when the students are quite interested in the activities, most of them go too fast in searching and writing. And this is obviously in contrast with most of the rules required to check fake news or verified dubious texts and sources. Young students view the information environment like a flat net, so it's difficult for them to identify second-hand sources, good sources from bad ones, information checked twice over versus cut and paste products. Moreover, they surf on the surface and are unfamiliar with the temporal and historical dimension. Outcomes. At the end, by using the student work as a base, we supplemented and corrected some Wikipedia items. But the main goal of the project was to help young students achieve the skills to do it. The project promoted the use of libraries, and this is the reason why the Fossoli project won a prize in the competition I Love Cultural Heritage Library section promoted by the Emilia-Romagna region. Results more widely. Now, the students are more sensitive to human rights. Indeed, the people imprisoned in the Fossoli camp were innocent, so they pay for their so-called race or political ideas. Studying their lives before being interned, teens developed a special empathy with these people, going on from the first reaction, which is one of rejection and horror. In the future, they might pay more attention to the sources and try to find knowledgeable voices. Why? It could be a prototype. We embark on a difficult and challenging journey. We choose a sensitive topic. We all know that in the World Wide Web, you can find strong historical revisionist position or, even worse, deniers. Moreover, this topic is complex owing to the vast range of sources and the combination of elements, objectivity of documents, subjectivity of interpretation, interaction between personal experience and history. Our hope is that the teenagers have understood that there is a relationship between personal experience, recent history, books, documents, news and information on the web. The main characteristic of this project is that we have done it all together. Institutions working on collective memory, libraries and librarians, students, teachers, tutors. So the most important result, according to us, is this. We have tried to keep the three dimensions together. The first, the socio-educational dimension, digital and information literacy. The cultural dimension, joint in design and managing of a complex project. Third one, the ethical and social dimension, the contribution to build digital common goods. We feel that it's absolutely necessary to help people, not only students or library users, to spot fake news and develop a critical thinking. A cultural and participative environment is becoming important for us to live together better. Thanks. This project
All right, we will now have a Q&A session with Enrica Manenti. This will be moderated by Kopana Terry.
Hi, Enrica. As we wait for some questions to come through in the Q&A, I've got a question for you. How well is the cooperation between schools and libraries in Italy?
The cooperation in Italy between school and libraries is not systematic, but often it is entrusted to the goodwill of teachers and librarians. In Italy, we have a lot of libraries. Perhaps you know already that they are divided in university library, public libraries, historical one, national one, and we don't have a ministry for libraries. So this is on one hand a rich environment, on the other hand we have a problem because there is no need to cooperate. We are not compelled to do this, but is only a bottom-up operation that a teacher and librarian together do. So we have very weak school libraries, while they will have hundreds of good example of cooperation between public libraries and schools. For us, the most important thing is that people has not yet been understood that the library is a formidable learning environment. So the books are important, but the library is important. So it's not so easy to convince teachers that libraries is a wonderful, good learning environment. So I do only one example. During the lockdown with COVID epidemic, people move books from the shelves of the school libraries to have more space for students. They don't understand that they may stay together better, perhaps.
Enrica, were oral histories available to the students?
The story of people involved.
So there were no pre-recorded oral histories that were available to the students?
I think that students have already experience of this story because they live in Carpi. And the Fossoli Foundation is well known in the city, in the town. And they start historical to know this historical vicenda of the town. So they know already, I think so. And perhaps they have some parents and people in family who view this camp because it was working up to 1960.
How long did it take the project to complete?
We have already, in this day, we are finishing because our aim was not to do perfect new entries of Wikipedia, no? As I told, but only to modify them in order to make it acceptable. So we don't modify too much the students' work. But we were compelled to stop the relationship with the students at the end of February. So it was terrible, perhaps you know, and for the students, they cannot go more to the school. And it was really a lack, a big black hole.
Yeah, so what is the situation like with the libraries in Italy today? Are the kids still not in school and the libraries are still closed?
We have reopened starting from June, a lot of libraries, but they again around 24 October has closed again in Italy. And in these days, the ministry told that it's possible to do home learning, for instance. And the only problem is that people are not allowed to go in because they try to make people stay at home. And so home learning is well developed, but is not too much. We need to reopen. We hope, I think within 1 month, we are able again to open the libraries. I hope so.
Yeah. Did the kids exhibit any anxiety? Any library anxiety?
Allora, this school has a library inside. And in Italy, there is a lot of school libraries. We don't know how many because there is not specific data about it. But in these very days, for instance, there is an event we named #Io leggo perché, which is I read because. And here people may gift to school libraries book. And the Association of Publishers do the same. So past year, they give for gift to the school libraries more than 1 million books. The problem is that most of the school libraries are not well organized. Some of them are only shelves with some book on, because we have not a figure of school librarians till now. Is not recognized, and often there are people with have problem of health problem to go on teaching, so they move from the class to the library, but most of them are not professional librarian, so it's a big problem for us.
In Italy, do teachers and professors discourage using Wikipedia in assignments?
I think this normally, yes. Because the prejudice, I think, is still quite strong. And at the beginning, even in this experience, the teacher was a little bit afraid about it. But after the first lesson, the second lesson, she changed her mind, because she learned together with us how is Wikipedia, how with a challenge to work with Wikipedia. It's not easy, it's not stupid, it's not so surface items, and was good for us too.
So do you think the project was successful in encouraging primary source material for research?
I think it was good, but we don't arrive at this point. It was enough for us try to students understand the different level, no? As I told before, they don't have deep perspective of the information. They think all information is something here and there. No, they are not able to do quite well done inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
So it was enough for us that they understand that there are librarians, that there is a book, author, affordable or not, and the first edition, the second translation. This is an article of newspaper. This is a journal, scientific. Was enough for them to arrive to understand this.
Right. So even though COVID has put the project a bit on hold, what do you think? What was the total time that it took to complete the project?
What was the total time we need?
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is already finished, because we have tried to have a balance together, collective balance of this, and to report to the region, Emilia-Romagna region. In occasion of this prize, we have a special ceremony and we must report to these people. And we have thought to go on with a new edition of this course, and we move from strictly students towards citizens. So the title of the new course is Digital Citizenship Education. So we try to do this more widely, 0 up to 100 for all people. Could be nice if we do another prototype in order to spread our ideas, our methods towards librarians and teachers and citizens too.
Yes.
This is your 2-minute warning.
What advice would you give to librarians who want to teach with Wikipedia?
Sorry?
What advice would you give teachers who want to teach with Wikipedia?
I think that they need to learn more themselves first. This is our environment, this is our panorama, this is landscape in Italy is like this. They must accept the challenge to renew, to learn. First teacher must learn and to go on. And we are trying to do this. We are a small group in Italy, but strong one. And do a lot of courses, a lot of webinars, a lot of occasion together with the Italian Librarian Association. We try to spread this method, and is quite easy, economic, and effective, according to us.
So we're almost out of time. Very quickly, can you sum up in 30 seconds what you've learned?
We have learned that is not easy. The students are not normally are not so have not enough competencies to read carefully, to choose carefully, to write. So it's a big work to do before, perhaps, no? At 17, we pretend, we wanted that people are able to read, understand, and write. Is not so easy, is not so common this. So we must work before too.
Thank you. Thank you, Enrica.
Enrica, if we were
Grazie.
live, you would have much cheering and clapping. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have such an accomplished expert. Our next speakers today are Abby Moore and Catherine Tingelstad, co-presenting about nuanced literacy and fake news. I'll read their bios for you so you know who they are. Abby Moore is an associate professor and education honors and global engagement librarian at UNC Charlotte. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in English literature from Lehigh University. In 2003, she began teaching English in the Bronx after being accepted into the New York City Teaching Fellows program. She transitioned to academic librarianship in 2011. In addition to her library responsibilities, she teaches in the Honors College at UNC Charlotte. Catherine Tingelstad is the Instruction and Curriculum Engagement Coordinator at the J. Murray Atkins Library at University of North Carolina at Charlotte. She earned her Master's of Library Science from North Carolina Central University and a Master of Healthcare Administration from Virginia Commonwealth University. Her research interests include media literacy, critical thinking and instruction, and curriculum development and integration. I'm sorry, I forgot to move their pictures forward. There's Abby Moore and Catherine Tingelstad. And our first video will be from Catherine. I'm sorry, from Abby.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in for our presentation about how our university library is tackling the challenges of digital media literacy and mis- and disinformation. I'm Abby Moore, the Education Honors and Global Engagement Librarian at UNC Charlotte, and my colleague and co-presenter is Catherine Tingelstad, Instruction and Curriculum Engagement Coordinator, also at UNC Charlotte. During this presentation, we intend to examine and comment on the relationship between digital media literacy and information literacy in our instruction practices, as well as propose ways via outreach and in-house professional development to establish expertise in digital media literacy. Let's get started. In 2018, UNC Charlotte was invited to participate in the Digital Polarization Initiative, a national project designed to build student media literacy. The Digital Polarization Initiative was grounded in the work of Mike Caulfield, using his 4 moves for evaluating online information. Check for previous work, go upstream to the source, read laterally, and circle back to build students' civic, information, and media literacy. After the Digital Polarization Initiative was completed, our library determined that it was essential to continue working with digital literacy. So we formed a digital media literacy committee. Our goals for the committee focused on 3 tracks: instruction, professional development, and outreach. To educate our student body about the perils of blindly consuming and sharing what one reads and sees online, we have incorporated digital media literacy into our library instruction program. Our committee spent the last year developing strategies for teaching digital media literacy in our large first and second year classes. These include first year writing courses and seminars and second year critical thinking and communication courses. We developed independent modules to focus on text, image, and video-based digital media, which have been rolled out with success in our instruction. While we've taken impactful strides over the past year, our committee still has or faces the challenge of reaching all students and standardizing instruction in order to ensure our students are prepared and willing to critically evaluate what they're consuming online. An additional challenge teaching librarians face is shouldering the responsibility of digital media literacy alongside other more traditional literacy efforts. For example, how do we pivot 180 degrees from emphasizing deep reading when we teach how to read a research article to teaching lateral reading? Lateral reading requires the consumer to read about the source when reading the source, which seems to contradict the importance of deep reading. I've found in my efforts to incorporate digital media literacy into my instruction that when I'm teaching students how to read laterally, I'm not teaching them how to not read deeply. They're simply reading for different information. They are still evaluating the source and the information presented by the video, tweet, post, or image, but they're also evaluating other sources, sites, and publications. Lateral reading requires that students think critically about what they're reading, consider context, and look for misleading information. While deep reading an article involves evaluating one source, lateral reading asks students to evaluate several different sources using similar evaluation criteria. I do not believe that these digital media literacy skills are that different from the information literacy skills we're asked to teach on a daily basis. Instead, I think these skills add to a student's arsenal of critical reading and thinking skills. In preparation for this presentation, I read quite a bit about how other academic libraries are facing the challenges of educating students about misinformation and disinformation. I'm sure it comes as no surprise that so many academic librarians are incorporating digital media literacy into their instruction and outreach programs. Librarians have long been defenders of the importance of evaluating and fact-checking sources. Examples of instruction that other libraries are working on include identifying as critical the information literacy for higher education frame authority is constructed and contextual, applying threshold concepts for information literacy, the PAWS, P-A-W-S versus P-A-U-S-E approach, and several other evaluative acronyms to evaluate websites, news media posts, and videos. And if they're lucky, they can offer credit-bearing courses on news and information literacy. So while not all of the instruction librarians at UNC Charlotte are incorporating digital media literacy into their teaching, some of us are indeed attempting it. For the last several years, I've been asked to teach 2 sessions on information literacy in a college transition course for student athletes. Most of the students in these sessions are freshmen, but each semester I also teach at least 1 session of transfer students. This year, instead of asking students to share the last article, video, or social media post they read that had to do with college athletics, which is my do now, I showed several sports-focused images that spread misinformation, like that Black Lives Matter tour bus on the left-hand side of the screen. We briefly discussed ways to evaluate what they were seeing and reading by fact-checking and reverse image searching. Additionally, we discussed how these images might cause an emotional reaction in viewers and how those reactions can have an impact on perpetuating the misinformation. Challenges I faced with this mini lesson included finding interesting and timely images, as well as grounding the lesson in the context of the learning objectives for the instruction session, which focused on turning a topic into a research question. While the mini lesson was college athletics themed, the learning activities within the first 10 minutes didn't necessarily make for an easy transition to a more traditional information literacy class of writing research questions. However, luckily, it did get them thinking about the topic of their inquiry project, which was college athletics. Other ways our instruction librarians are are incorporating digital media literacy into their courses include teaching students how to do reverse image searches to show them how to evaluate images for accuracy and context. Catherine is creating tutorials on digital media literacy in order to flip her instruction so that students are prepared for the learning activities when she meets them in class, and for the professors who are asking for asynchronous instruction from her and other teaching librarians. In the near future, we will expand our relationship with student athletes. All student athletes attend Wednesday workshops in which they learn life and study skills. The library instruction program has been invited to present at least one session on digital media literacy. During this session, there will be enough time to cover quite a bit more than what I've been able to do with them recently in terms of digital media literacy. The committee is planning to create digital media literacy slides that focus on reading laterally, reverse image searching, and fact-checking for those professors and instructors who want their students to learn these skills, but don't feel that they have enough time in the semester to dedicate an entire session to digital media literacy. The committee has set a goal of creating mini lessons that go along with these slides. Librarians can use the mini lessons to start their more traditionally generic version of information literacy instruction, but use them in such a way that provides an easy transition to the main learning activities of the session. So one of our first objectives as a committee, after writing up our own definition of digital media literacy, was to create a database of lesson plans that could be used by any and all of the teaching librarians. As I mentioned above, we are also planning to write mini lessons and design slides that supplement those lessons. However, no matter what we create, our main challenge is, and has always been, providing effective professional development for librarians who are uncomfortable with teaching skills that they are unfamiliar with. In the next part of this presentation, Catherine will talk about how the committee tried and continues to try to overcome the challenge of providing librarians with enough knowledge about digital media literacy so that we're comfortable with our roles as experts. Ultimately, this question about achieving expertise is key to overcoming this challenge. How do you become an expert? And how do you convince others that that expertise is valid and trustworthy in this time when trust and authority has been eroded?
Thanks, Abby. When our Digital Media Literacy Committee was in its early stages of planning and establishing goals, the dean of our library tasked us with becoming campus experts on this topic. While many of us in the group believed that we could develop a proficient understanding of media literacy and could incorporate the concept into our instruction, we were concerned about how exactly to establish expertise on a campus of approximately 30,000 students and more than 3,000 faculty and staff members. The success of this group has in part come from our understanding that this would be a long-term investment involving research, discussion, planning, and action. The practices of creating propaganda, misleading and manipulated information, and news stories featuring untrue content have existed for a long time. But the intensity and widespread nature of these practices over the last 5 years has forced journalists, educators, and many others with a stake in conveying the truth to quickly develop approaches to identifying, evaluating, and preventing the spread of misinformation. In its first year of existence, our Digital Media Literacy Committee met on a bi-weekly basis to investigate, discuss, and share articles on media literacy. We talked about information evaluation strategies, the concepts of misinformation and disinformation, the challenges of explaining algorithms, and the importance of this topic in relation to the 2020 election. We knew that it was important for us to develop a shared understanding of media literacy and to be clear in defining our goals for what we intended to achieve. So we decided that it would be critical to our success to create a guiding statement to set the direction for the work we would do in our university community and potentially beyond. The 7 librarians in the Digital Media Literacy Committee each developed their own version of a guiding statement for the group. The committee then met in a working session to review each person's statement and to use the best ideas from each statement to craft a clear and comprehensive guiding statement for the group. We believed it was important to first define digital media literacy and then to specifically state our actionable goals. You can read our group's final statement on the screen. The next stage in our process toward establishing recognized expertise in digital media literacy was to think about how we could share our knowledge with students, faculty, and staff members at UNC Charlotte. Our group planned to incorporate media literacy into our library instruction sessions across the curriculum, and Abby has outlined our approach to instruction. We also recognized that we could connect with a wide variety of campus and community groups through planning and hosting outreach events. These events would create an awareness of the need for media literacy skills and strategies for effectively identifying, assessing, and sharing online information. Additional benefits of this outreach were that individuals and groups on campus would recognize the library's involvement in digital media literacy, and that we would begin to develop a reputation as a campus leader in this initiative. Our Digital Media Literacy Committee had plans to implement a full schedule of outreach events, including speaker presentations, professional development opportunities for public librarians, off-campus events for faculty members, and workshops for faculty teaching some of the large first and second year classes, including first year writing and critical thinking and communication courses. The onset of the pandemic and the move to remote learning and working necessitated that we become creative in how we conduct our outreach and the timing of these initiatives. Much of what we could do would now take place online through meeting software or the creation of videos and tutorials designed to share information through different platforms. Our first outreach event in October was a major coup for the campus as we hosted a Zoom presentation featuring Craig Silverman, who is a Canadian journalist, the media editor of BuzzFeed News, and an expert on online rumors, fake news and misinformation, disinformation, and media manipulation. Silverman's presentation was titled Election 2020, How to Verify What You Read, See, and Hear Online. The event was attended by faculty, undergraduate and graduate students, staff, and community members. You can see some of the feedback we received on the right side of the screen. Based on the success of this event, we plan to host a speaker or panel of speakers each semester. Another outreach initiative that targeted a different segment of our university and community population is a series of TikTok videos created by a member of the Digital Media Literacy Committee. This series is called Stay Skeptical, and in it, Natalie or Nat presents a series of 3 steps people can follow to confirm or debunk online stories. The first of these TikTok videos was liked by more than 800 people. This initiative illustrates the importance of using a variety of communication methods to reach a wide range of audiences. In addition to holding outreach events, we have created materials and resources on media literacy that we have shared and promoted to our campus and the wider community. A committee member, Mark Bess, created a comprehensive election guide that was widely used by our students, faculty, and staff. Our committee also decided to share the resources we have developed with the campus community, so we constructed a research guide featuring lesson plans, articles, videos, and other materials that can be used for instruction and education about media literacy. Our most recent creation is a graphic image featuring our own suggestions for analyzing online information. Slow down, ask questions, look around. All of these outreach efforts have allowed the Digital Media Literacy Committee to create awareness of the importance of this topic to our campus and larger community. And as I previously mentioned, this outreach has provided awareness of our group's initiatives and our campus leadership in addressing digital media literacy. We are currently at the stage in the evolution of our group's work where our efforts are being recognized and we are being approached by faculty and staff on campus to discuss collaborations. Our group is beginning to identify the many faculty members and student groups on campus that are interested and involved in media literacy from a variety of perspectives. During the past several months, we have worked closely with the 49er Democracy Experience at UNC Charlotte, a group of students, staff, and faculty that offer the campus a nonpartisan platform for learning about and engaging in civic life. 2 members of our Digital Media Literacy Committee now participate on the group's advisory board. Additionally, we have participated in pre-election tabling activities for transfer students and have presented information on our instruction and outreach efforts to the group's board. This exposure led to interest from a faculty member who is now working with our group to develop a network of faculty members with expertise in media literacy. They will work in conjunction with our group to plan events, create outreach opportunities, and promote instruction across campus. We have also been asked to participate in the campus's Community Engagement Advisory Council, which is a network of faculty and staff that champions community-engaged research and teaching. This budding network of media literacy proponents is investigating the possibility of applying for a grant through our Campus Center for Teaching and Learning to provide stipends to instructors to develop media literacy content for their classes. We hope and expect that the impact of our work with digital media literacy will grow exponentially as this network of faculty, staff, and students expands. The librarians who make up the Digital Media Literacy Group at UNC Charlotte recognized early on that achieving expertise in a field does not happen overnight. We have been working since 2018 to investigate and learn about media literacy, develop ambitious yet achievable goals, create engaging lesson plans and instructional materials, and generate a dynamic slate of outreach opportunities. We will continue to expand these efforts by partnering and collaborating with other engaged individuals and campus groups. It is exciting to see the rewards of our work in terms of campus and community awareness of media literacy and its importance to producing engaged, well-informed citizens as we outlined in our guiding statement. However, this is not an ending point, particularly since the information environment continues to change and evolve, along with the manipulation of that information. So while our group has become proficient in understanding and teaching about media literacy, we are still on that journey to becoming experts.
And now we will have a question and answer session with Abby and Catherine, hosted by Kopana. Kopana, you are muted.
No, can't you read my mind? We've got a couple of great questions that have come in already, so I'll start there. And our first question is, given the fact that media literacy involves pedagogical aspects, how should the instructional librarian go about rethinking the digital literacy techniques in the light of these new pedagogical approaches? Furthermore, Since the media literacy sessions involve myriad outcomes or experiences, does the UNC, the UNC Chapel, Charlotte Library have any formal system of developing best practices out of the media literacy session and their formal documentation? That's a long question.
Yeah, that is, that's an interesting question. This is Catherine, and I really appreciate that question because I think we're at the point right now where we, that would be a logical next step for us to begin to develop best practices for the work that we're doing, the content, the information that we're sharing. And I think that's a natural next step for us to really think about sharing those best practices. We have to recognize that across the university, there are so many different programs and subject areas that while we want to be consistent in pedagogical approaches, we have to leave some leeway for the different subject areas and how individual librarians or faculty may want to approach the issue based on whether they're talking about healthcare, whether they're talking about there's just something in something related to history, current events, all of those different areas. We want to leave enough room for them to be able to kind of customize for their various teaching.
I'd also be interested to hear there's so many different types of pedagogical approaches to instruction in general. So is there any, from that, the person who submitted that question, any particular pedagogical approaches that they're talking about?
Yeah, please tell us in the chat, and we'll take a look at those. In the meantime, was the Silverman seminar taped, and if not, why? And if it was, do you have a URL to it?
Actually, it was. It was recorded by our campus media group, and it is available. And I can absolutely find that URL and share that with you right now.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure.
And while you're doing that, our next question is, has the committee developed a way for the project to measure outcomes? Have you thought about how you can evaluate whether your audience's digital literacy grew, stayed the same, or perhaps decreased?
That's a really good question. And I have to say that assessment has been a real, standardizing any form of assessment has been a real challenge for us. We're actually just at the point where we are rolling out instruction or lesson plans. And like I said in my part of the presentation, not everybody is ready to teach digital media literacy. So assessment hasn't been a priority for us yet. And we have not standardized that part of the learning process. And also, like I said, a lot of professors are not willing to dedicate an entire session to digital media literacy at this point. They're more focused on inquiry and the steps of the research process and database, navigating databases. So if we're lucky, some of us are lucky enough to be able to do full lessons on this. But for those of us who have to squeeze it in somewhere in the mini lesson, oftentimes the assessment is a type of formative assessment where we just ask, we do a question and answer, or we do a 1-minute paper, or a thumbs up, thumbs down type of assessment, just so that we can gauge if they have established a bit of understanding, and then move on to the kind of overall learning objective of the lesson. So no, that's definitely in the works, but it's not something that we have yet as standardized.
Baby
Right.
steps.
And one of the things that I'm really enjoying doing is incorporating opportunities for students to assess actual cases. There's a really good example, and I've used this quite a bit, of two pediatric groups, the American College of Pediatricians and the American Academy of Pediatrics. And I asked the students, after we have gone through strategies and talked about media literacy, to take some time at the end of class, use the skills that we've talked about, and determine which of these would be a better source for an assignment, and which one they would use and why. And that's always a really good activity, to actually have them use the skills that you've actually talked about. And I did put the link to the Craig Silverman recording. If somebody wants to just test that out and make sure it works, then I will, if it doesn't, I can work on that.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Let's go back to the very first question. And Abby, I think you asked for some clarification on the specific kinds of pedagogy that they were interested in. And the answer is critical pedagogy, for instance.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we are incorporating into. We're actually trying to incorporate critical pedagogy into all of our instruction practices. But certainly there is a place for it when we are teaching digital media literacy. Catherine, I don't know if you want to comment a little bit more on specific examples or not.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of anything specifically. I do think we are asking students to use a lot of different skills. We're asking them to approach this with the idea of exploration and investigation, and really taking some time to understand what they're looking at.
Maybe when we ask them, we have talked about lesson plans to evaluate or to talk about algorithms and evaluate those for biases. That is an example of one way we can bring in critical pedagogy, or an example of a topic in which we can incorporate critical pedagogy into our lesson and our teaching.
This is your 2-minute warning.
Okay, so let's pack in a bunch here. What are some of your other ideas for outreach?
Some of the things that we're talking about are creating an online workshop for faculty members who teach the large writing and critical thinking and communication courses. We want to get the buy-in from the directors of those programs so that we make sure we're communicating the information in the most effective way, and so that we reach a significant portion of the instructors in those classes. We also hope to create a workshop for our Mecklenburg County Public Library staff, and this would really be a professional development opportunity for them to learn about strategies for teaching their patrons, so that they could actually conduct classes or use these skills in their reference interactions. One other thing, prior to the pandemic, the Research and Instruction Services Unit at Atkins Library was holding a pop-up event each semester where we would invite faculty to a local brewery on a Saturday. We'd have pizza and activities for children, and the pop-up features librarians conducting a short presentation on a topic of interest. So we hope to focus one of those on digital media literacy. And then one more thing, we're considering collaborations with the Teaching Lab School on campus, and also with a program called Pilot, which is the largest leadership program at our university.
That's great. What resources would you recommend for learning about media literacy?
I can go first, Abby. I would recommend the Verification Handbook for Disinformation and Media Manipulation, which was edited by Craig Silverman. So it's the Verification Handbook for Disinformation and Media Manipulation. And the content of this book, it's an online book, freely available, is presented by journalists who use these strategies and tools to work to verify their sources. I'd also recommend Mike Caulfield's online book, Web Literacy for Student Fact Checkers, because much of our work is based in Caulfield's strategies. And then I just say the News Literacy Project has a lot of great resources. And I also like Stanford University's Civic Online Reasonings repository of lesson plans and assessments.
In addition to all of those awesome resources that Catherine just talked about, I just added a link to our digital media literacy guide that lists some not only does it list those types of informative resources about digital media literacy, but also some really good sites like Newseum and Common Sense Media that will offer some lesson planning ideas about teaching digital media literacy. So check those out and get in touch if you have questions about incorporating digital media literacy into instruction.
I will stop you here. Thank you both so very much. Again, I'm sorry we can't be in front of a live audience, but you would hear a round of clapping and cheering. This was just terrific and so educational, very beneficial. And I plan to talk with my staff about the resources you presented as well. I have a couple here in attendance today, in fact. All right. Well, I want to let you know that on January 21st, we will have our next lecture. Our presenters then will be Katarina Beck, Vishwani Gupta, and Jeffrey Knapp, and they will be discussing media literacy in the digital age. You can sign up for these on the IFLA News Media website under events. And then on February 8th, we will have Damian Wong, Sarah Peck, and Victor Mutyev, who will be presenting on library practices in teaching and evaluating media literacy. You can sign up for that as well. You could attend all of these lectures for free from the News Media website. I'd like to, again, thank our presenters, our moderators, and our IFLA section hosts. This was all made possible through the very generous support of IFLA and through the willingness of our presenters to go virtual with this, and for our volunteer efforts from our moderators. We're so grateful to have everybody's generous support and participation in these events. Thank you all, audience, for visiting us, for attending this, and for asking excellent questions. We are so excited to have all of you here, and we're so grateful. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day.